Welcome, everyone. This is Bobby Harris, the Executive Director of the Utility Broadband Alliance, and it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar. We are focusing today with our members from across the United States. We want you guys, though, to engage also. So there's a question button on your toolpad. If you have questions for this panel, as we go along, feel free to type them in. We will have time at the end, time and permit. We'll try to get to everyone's questions, and we will read them exactly as you write them. So feel free to use the question tool to leave your questions for the audience. And as I said, we'll try to get to as many as possible. But in order to save time and make sure that you don't have to hear me talk any longer, let me turn it over immediately to John Vexey from Nokia. And John, kick us off, sir.
Thanks, Bobby. So today we'll get to some introductions, but I'll just sort of frame up, how we got to this point and why I thought this was an interesting topic of discussion. So I attended PlugFest in Minneapolis last year, and I watched the panel that was moderated by Matt Olson that included Caleb, Ali Mohammed, and Basit Malik. And I found it to be a fascinating discussion because how automation and AI plays in the operation of a private LTE network, I think, is going to be foundational in terms of where these networks go. And so one of the things that I was struck, though, when Matt Olson kicked off the panel was when he said that at the time, if you think private LTE is hyped, nothing is more hyped than AI. And while Matt was correct at the time, I believe the price of NVIDIA stock was $400. And so in less than 8 months, I think NVIDIA hit 1,200, so it's up 300%. So does that mean that the hype of private LTE is up 300%? It certainly is playing more in all facets of our life. And then the other thing that led into this paper was there was a UBBA paper that was authored in August of 2022, so less than 2 years ago. And it talked about the types of talents needed, all the human intelligence or human resources and headcount required. It was a very honest paper, I think, given that it was the input from the authors. But they were talking about 20, 30, 40 people required to operate a private LTE network of decent size with maybe an IMS server and so forth. So the need for private LTE, I think, with AI and automation is key. So with that, I'll kick off the introductions. I am John Vexey. I am in Cloud and Cognitive Services. It's a fancy way for saying Nokia's Network Managed Services, and I'm an account manager. And with that, why don't I turn it over to Caleb?
Hey everyone, it's great to be with you today. I'm Caleb Murphy. I'm with Sempra, SDG&E, also SoCalGas. Been with the company for a while. I'm in a specialty group that is responsible for maintaining, engineering, architecting our gas and electric communications systems, and I'm an IT architect there.
Thanks. Marjan, would you like to go next?
Yes, hello everyone. Great to be with you. My name is Marjan Rajabi. I am a senior manager leading the Grid Transformation Office. It's a group that enables digital transformation within Southern California Edison. It's a group that's on the IT side, and we're focusing on grid operations.
Great. Edwin?
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Edwin. I'm with Nokia, with the Cloud and Network Services. I support John in the Cloud and Cognitive Services too. And what they call an enablement manager, right? An engagement manager, I'm sorry. I help the utilities and enterprises in general enable the network operations, enable security operations. And we've been using AI in our NOC services for a while now, and hopefully what I have today, what I share today, is useful for what utilities are doing now or are looking forward to do in the near future.
Great. So with that, why don't we start off by asking some of the panelists how they're using AI today. I think, Caleb, you started back in Minneapolis and led it off. If you could sort of just give a little bit of a recap of that, and then, you know, what's changed? So there have been new developments. How does San Diego Gas and Electric look at AI for your operations?
Great question. AI is something that we're really leaning into as far as being a business enabler, but also a reliability enabler. We've established a center of excellence specifically for AI and ML technologies across the company. We've brought in various partners that help us through those steps, taking a business case and proving out, you know, is it really true? Does it have legs enough to implement? Doing a lot of testing, piloting. We've brought a lot of those business cases and ultimately business value into production. We've got a large queue of other capabilities and values that we believe AI and ML can help with. Now, it's also, by the way, something that we grade our projects on. When we put any kind of project forward, we have in our templates a space to describe how AI and ML may tie in to that project. It doesn't tie into every project, but something that we're beginning to look at in terms of all investments, technology related. Are there ways that we can improve this solution with AI or ML? Are there ways that we can improve business value with AI or ML? And again, that all comes back to our center of excellence, creating standards, guidelines, ways of thinking through the processes that AI and ML could affect. It's been very successful with the help of a lot of partners, like I mentioned. I can talk more about specific use cases. I think one thing that has yet to be tapped, we focused a lot on our gas and electric business and IT components, but one thing we've yet to tap is network operations. We've traditionally done a lot of automation within network operations, but when we talk about AI or ML investments, that's something that we're looking forward to. We see a lot of potential there.
Gotcha. Thanks, Caleb. Marjan, would you like to talk some about the AI and ML initiatives going on at Southern California Edison?
Absolutely. So the Grid Transformation Office, the organization that I'm leading, was put together in 2020. And we started by coming up with a strategy for automation and artificial intelligence. Even back then, we knew that, hey, you know, this is the direction that we're going. The whole planet is going. Typically, the utility industry is about 10 to 12 years behind on the technology curve for very good reasons. Nevertheless, we are going in that direction, and we knew that we need to be proactive. Particularly, there needs to be forethought taken in having a value-added automation or artificial intelligence solution. And what I mean by that is that I'm sure that many in this industry do face the challenge of having disparate data systems, legacy technologies that may not always speak nicely together. So we need to plan for those things. We need to think about our data strategy, which is the foundation for any type of technology utilization for automation or for leveraging artificial intelligence. So back in 2020, we started with a roadmap. And our focus has been up to now on automation, which is identifying through the workforce, because they are the subject matter experts who live with our processes on a day-to-day basis. So identifying any manual, error-prone, repetitive, redundant processes, and then once they're optimized, to try to automate them. So our journey so far has been primarily focused on automation. However, we've also started playing in predictive analytics. I'll give you an example. For instance, we wanted to have a better handle on predicting RTU failures. So we have gathered the historical data that we have on the RTUs, and by leveraging a machine learning algorithm, have become able to predict RTU failures. And this is helping us to save $1.9 million annually. And part of that saving is, for instance, to prevent truck rolls. So these are the technologies that we have prepared for. Certainly the next step is artificial intelligence. While we are not currently using on the grid side artificial intelligence for our operations, we're getting ready. And on our roadmap, we have some proof of concepts that we're planning to have completed by the end of the year and into the second half of next year. But within the next 2 to 3 years, we do see that we're going to have greater integration on some prioritized use cases.
That's great. Well, thanks, Marjan, for that. You mentioned reducing truck rolls. You think about the number of alarms that a utility gets today on their network. I mean, I think when we had the webinar or when we had the panel session at PlugFest last year, Ali Mohammed talked about thousands of alarms per day. And so sifting through those alarms to determine, what is an appropriate work order, or what is a work order that should be generated, and then what truck roll should be, generated. So Edwin, I don't know if you want to comment on that and just talk about the methodology. I don't know if there's a couple of slides you want to throw up, but what kind of automation and data-driven insights are brought into a NOC that helps filter out and give real data? So why don't I turn it over to you, Edwin?
Sure. Thank you. It surprised me that y'all are not doing it for operations, because from our perspective, I would have thought that operations was the low-hanging fruit for AI. Maybe it's because that's what we've been focusing on for the past couple of years, and we are considering it to be more like second nature. I'm sharing just a quick slide on what we've done in the past. So from our perspective, our main business in the Network Operations Center is to be managing customers' network and doing the 24/7 proactive management on behalf of the customers and being part of their operations arm. And what we have done in the past is we had a lot of manual efforts, like what Marjan was indicating, and we made a strategic decision of we need to make it easier, faster, more cost efficient, especially if we're going to be managing multiple networks across the globe, and make it easier to reuse the findings from one network and apply it to others. Make it faster to be able to manage all that information, all that data that is out there that is coming in droves to the engineers. So we were able to use the data that we were already getting in terms of logs, in terms of probes, in terms of traces, anything related to the FCAPs, what we were doing, fault management, change management, and look for ways of incorporating AI, incorporating the correlations, the easier tying in of root causes to solutions to errors, and create automated responses to help us resolve tickets faster and hence be able to manage more tickets across different networks. All that, though, has been incorporated and added and created into a methodology. So a lot of trial and error, a lot of testing, a lot of realization of there's a lot of data needs to be cleaned up. There's a lot of data. We need more. There's a lot of data. What can we get out of it? And getting the insights, getting those correlations and applying the method has given us the efficiencies that we were looking for in order to automate some tasks, automate the workflows, respond faster, resolve faster. And we created modules that can be utilized to help with the operations. Now our NOC has been transformed, and we're already in this working model where ML is part of our routine in terms of we're always looking to how to improve, how to make things better, how to continue to adapt the different models. And it's been a journey. So it's working for us now. It's kind of like a behind the scenes. It's part of the methodology. But I just want to caution that it took some time to get here, and it's not a simple plug and play where you take a module and you put it in there and it starts spewing results. It's a lot of checking. It's a lot of defining what is it that we're looking for, collecting the right data, preparing it, doing the modeling, training, retraining, rechecking, and then confirming that it fits what we set out to do. So, but it does pay its dividend once you've made that decision to invest, like Caleb and Marjan have done, and you got to keep moving forward.
That's great. Thanks, Edwin. So I guess the next question I have is in this whole paradigm shift from manual network management to overseeing the machines that do this. There's a trust factor, and how do we look? How do you look at the system decisions that are going to give you trust in this network? So, Caleb, maybe you could address that point.
Yeah, that oversight piece is one of the key pitfalls from our learnings at our company with AI and ML, is making sure that there's a human in the loop, right? Making sure that whatever this AI function is determining is the right answer for this situation really aligns with reality. So it takes a lot of training. It takes a lot of oversight. One example of this is in our intelligent imaging processing platform. We're taking high resolution photos of our gas and electric grid to look for ways that we may need to improve in operations. Maybe there's a component that has failed prematurely that is harder to see. Instead of having somebody climb that pole and look at it, we're doing that with a drone, or even driving by with a phone in a car. We can't trust immediately what we're seeing out of that processing. We actually put some qualified electrical workers in that loop to make sure that what the application was determining were issues were true. It took a lot of training, and it takes a lot of training to build trust. I kind of think of these technologies as having another employee with you, another worker with you, a buddy, right? That maybe might be new to the company. They're learning. They're really smart. They can get things done a lot faster than I can. But sometimes applying that data or applying the reasoning might not be completely correct. It takes time sitting with that new buddy of yours at work to make sure that they're in tune with all of the things that have to be considered in decision-making processes. Once that buddy gets really good, though, they begin to make more consistent decisions that really align with the goal that you're trying to advance to, and you begin to trust that work output a little better. Depending on what kind of decisions being made, maybe you trust that a little earlier with larger, more impactful decisions. It may take some time for that buddy really to understand what's going on. But at the end of the day, you're further along than you would have been without that buddy, right? It's an enabler, but there's a trust but verify teaching arrangement that kind of has to happen. That human has to be in the loop with AI. And
that could take, you could spend a year verifying that data, 2 years, 3. It could be a while. Yeah. Marjan, do you want to comment? So in terms of the question of AI making system decisions and you trusting those decisions, or to build trust in the network. How does Southern California Edison look at that?
Yeah, so we're definitely embracing the concept of the technology because we can see that it is going to have positive operational impact for us. So the promise of artificial intelligence is great, considering that today, for instance, Digital Grid Services, the organization that's in IT that is managing and operating, not only just some of the grid assets, but TND assets as well. We're somewhere at 100,000, over 100,000 assets that we manage. Well, we are anticipating that number to double or triple over the next 8 years. So we're going to need some help. And obviously, artificial intelligence is going to enable us to do that without bringing an army and increasing our labor force, right? And that's obviously would adversely impact our operating budget and our cost. Hence, this is the direction to go. However, as Caleb said, yeah, we do also see it as an enabler, but there are considerations that we need to be careful about. Being in the critical infrastructure business, we need to be methodical and gradual in the way that we approach any type of implementation. We do anticipate that through artificial intelligence, we will be able to have quite a bit of positive impact on our operations when it comes to mean time to resolution. So we feel that MTTR is going to be positively impacted. Any aspect of incident management, core incident and data correlation when it comes to a NOC operation, and then the mitigation and remediation of those incidents. We're also seeing artificial intelligence greatly benefiting us just from a simple large language model if we need to create job packages for some of the implementations. However, coming back to trust, before we can run, we need to stand up, then we need to take a few steps, walk, and to get there. So there's going to be a period of observability that we're going to need in order to ensure that the model is learning the data appropriately so that we feel comfortable to delegate some of the decision making to artificial intelligence. However, our plan initially is in order to help us gain that trust, we are going to be in an interactive phase as we progress in our use cases, meaning that we're going to be working collaboratively with the artificial intelligence technology, because you have to have the human in the loop. And it will say, for instance, would you like me to do the following action step in mitigating this particular incident? And we're going to say yes. So through that interaction, the model will learn. It will learn the inherent behavior, and that is going to take several years. But we're going to select our use cases carefully, prioritize them, looking both at risk and the impact to our operation. In some cases, we're going to be looking for high impact but low risk to start us on the journey of artificial intelligence implementation, to eventually gain that trust and then feel more comfortable to let the technology help us in our operational efficiencies.
That's great.
I actually,
So,
there are two things real quick, John, that Caleb and Marjan mentioned that I really liked, and it's the trust but verify and the gradual, right? So from our perspective, it's kind of like we went by using the framework that the CRISP-DM methodology. We are doing that testing. We are doing that reevaluating at the different stages here, both when collecting the data, when cleaning it up, and the modeling. So nothing ever goes out to the field, to the final deployment, without having an internal check. And even once it makes it to the deployment for us, which is the NOC fully utilizing it, it's not a completely closed loop type of, here comes an input, here's an output, and it gets automatically executed. It's more of, there's the input, the output comes out, the individual still checks it, still confirms that it's applicable, runs it, makes sure it's still, it did what it was supposed to do, and reinforces the high percentage. And it's doing that additional check at that point. When the models are being developed also, an additional check that is being done is making sure that there's collaboration with the data scientists and the domain subject matter expertise. The data scientist brings in their expertise in terms of how to clean the data, how to create the features, how to select the best model for what is being looked for, what's the business need or the problem that is being addressed. And the telecom SME is bringing in their specific expertise in terms of the confirmation of, yes, the tool is making this correlation, but it doesn't really make sense. You can't really trust it from the beginning. Maybe there's something else that it's not considering. And together, they figure out how to tweak the model, how to train it better, what additional data is needed, how to validate the model itself, and any errors that come out, how do you integrate them back into the system to generate stronger and more effective models. So definitely the trust but verify needs to be part of it. And the gradual, I think we're always going to be in that gradual introduction of one use case and then the next problem need and then the next, reusing the lessons learned from the previous iteration, incorporating lessons learned, but still going from point to point without getting to a point of completely closed loop. I don't see that ever happening, at least in my lifespan, my work lifespan.
And if I may just add a point here. So part of the whole trust, it also comes with cultural adoption and cultural change. Because in some areas, you're going to naturally and understandably so experience resistance. So one of my responsibilities and the responsibility of any leader that is bringing these technologies in is to think about cultural adoption. Even though it is my responsibility to help with that, I also tell the teams that, look, the human in the loop is absolutely important, and AI should be considered like a co-pilot. We still want the human to be the pilot, because the moment, it doesn't matter if it's artificial intelligence or any type of technology, the moment that we become complacent, that we do not employ critical thinking, is when things go in the wrong direction. So with any technology, but particularly artificial intelligence, because it has such significant power and ramification, it becomes even so more important for us to ensure there's no complacency, that there is critical thinking involved in what we do, in the interaction with the technology, and that we do use our inner discernment to ultimately make the final decisions and to overrule where necessary.
Good.
Totally agree.
So we've talked a little bit about AI and operations. AI could be a big investment, all right, and or not. I mean, it could be done efficiently. But how are utilities looking at return on investment? Have there been discussions inside either Southern California Edison or San Diego Gas and Electric in terms of what type of results they're trying to look at, horizons for delivering these results, so forth? Caleb, can you comment on that?
Sure. I think in some ways it's similar to the way that we've graded business value in the past, but with some differences, right? I think there is an element of being progressive and keeping up with advanced technologies for the betterment of our ratepayers. Some of these things may not result in dollar savings for a utility, but at the end of the day, make our ratepayer feel like they're more either connected to their utility or getting a better service for the same amount of money. Now, there's always going to be the quick wins that save money also, and those should be highlighted. But I think there's a lot of intangibles that need to be considered with AI and ML advancement. If we're not in that game, if we're not pushing the boundaries on what we can do with AI and ML, we might be losing track of being a good partner to our ratepayers and to our other partners. So I think it's a big enabler there. In addition to that, some people may be concerned that certain jobs might go away, and maybe we grade some of those advancements or potential advancements based on saved hours or saved labor. But I think the thing that this highlights even more is that the business skills, the experience, the discernment, like you said, Marjan, is the huge value that these employees hold. And at the end of the day, I know our company is very focused on not getting rid of people. It's making sure that the people are being used in a way that is best beneficial to the business and to themselves. Reassignment to more important, more adventurous, more interesting tasks. So all of that said, there's a lot of different dimensions to look at here, and some of them are old, ultimately making a more efficient business, and some of them are new in terms of keeping that relationship with our ratepayers, with our policy setting agents, crisp, clean, and new, doing what's best for our partners.
Yeah. So Marjan, Southern California Edison has a very big service territory. I think you're 50,000 square miles. Mm-hmm. And you're going to build a fairly large RAN of almost 1,000 sites. Is one of your ROIs going to be measuring, how many truck rolls you do once the network is fully deployed? How many can be avoided? Are the work orders necessary that trigger those truck rolls? Does Southern California Edison have some sort of plan in there for metrics in terms of how AI and ML could help in that regard?
Absolutely. We put a framework together and a pretty robust governance model to ensure that any type of ideas that are bubbled up are evaluated for at least a minimum of 200% return on investment. If we're going to be implementing these technologies, we've got to remember somebody has to also maintain these. So there is a cost associated. So we said we're going to start with 200% return on investment on these types of technology investments, whether it is predictive analytics, whether it is some automation or artificial intelligence. And so we spent an entire year, believe it or not, just putting together a governance process because we wanted to ensure that at the end of the day, we do have a solid use case and return on investment. There's a statistic out there that 70% of all IT implementations are not realized or fully realized to their intended outcome and objectives. So it's important for us, not to be one of those statistics as much as possible. So this framework is actually a 5-layered framework that's looking first at the ideation, the cost-benefit analysis, then we prioritize our projects, then we implement them and do realization, and finally we also do recognition because that's part of cultural change. So similar with artificial intelligence, we estimate that it has to have at a minimum of 200% return on investment. But because of the power of the technology, it is going to have likely quite a bit of return on investment. Now, we haven't actually implemented one today, And there's a statistic out there that says really only 2% of organizations globally have actually implemented artificial intelligence to date in a way that it's actually providing them value. Many are exploring it, and we are certainly in that state where we're exploring it quite profusely. And within the next few years, we're looking at actually implementing the technology. And as I mentioned, we're going to start at the end of the year with a proof of concept. But it is going to assist us very strongly from an organizational efficiency. When we look historically at our spend over the last 5 years and the growth of assets, you'll actually see that we have a curve that trends upward in the growth of assets. But we have been able to keep our O&M fairly steady. And you might ask, wow, how is it possible when you went from, say, 75,000 asset base to over 100,000 and you're still keeping your O&M flat and even trending a little bit downward? Well, part of that is through automation. So you can just think about what artificial intelligence is going to do. We're planning with our field area network to grow to some 900 RAN sites in the next 6 years. So we're adding a lot more nodes, a lot more assets, and definitely the key to maintaining operational efficiency and effectiveness will be through the reliance on technologies such as ML and artificial intelligence.
Thanks. So we're getting towards the end, and before we go to Q&A, but there was an article that I saw recently from Goldman Sachs that I thought was very interesting, and the title was that AI is poised to drive 160% increase in data center power demand, and that this will result in the need for 50 billion invested in North American utilities in new generation sources to meet that demand. And so I think I before this call, I might have sent that out to you, Edwin. I don't know if you want to comment on what you think, and then I'd like to hear from the utilities, because in a sense, AI is becoming almost like a force multiplier, because that'll require more SCADA devices, more distributed generation, maybe some more big generation. But Edwin, why don't I kick it over to you, and then we'll hear from the utilities.
Yeah, just a quick comment on the return on investment first. And from our perspective, it's kind of like we're not measured on the return on investment of a specific AI initiative anymore, since it's now considered part of the operations, right? Everything is considered as one business case, right, wrong, or indifferent. That's how it's being used, at least for us and the NOC. So everything is analyzed as a whole. But it's definitely an area that needs to be considered in terms of what value is being extracted. Are we really addressing the key problem with this methodology, and does it make sense to implement it this way? Because there might be other ways to do the same, get the same result or similar result, much cheaper or close enough that helps with 90% of the cases, 95%, and it's good enough. So that's a good area to consider. Definitely the return on investment is an area that needs to be explored and evaluated as part of the planning. I think utilities are in a very interesting space in terms of they're going to be using AI to help with their operations and everything else, as well as we're going to be using a lot of energy and consuming, and it's going to require a lot of energy. So we need to be supplying all that energy and stuff like that. So it's kind of like they're in a virtuous cycle: more energy, more AI. And it's like, okay, wait, at what point does it stabilize? But I think time will tell, right? From our perspective, it's more of start utilizing AI now, start looking at those trends and figuring out which area should I be focusing on next in terms of what my AI can solve for us. So, but it would be interesting to hear from Caleb and Marjan their thoughts on that power increase in the AI in the data center. That's going to be
yeah. And before we go into that, just so one snippet of information: a single ChatGPT query requires 2.9 watt-hours of electricity, compared with 0.3 watt-hours for a Google search. So 10 times as much energy is consumed on a ChatGPT query as on a Google search. So anyway, with that, Marjan, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is where we're looking in the crystal ball here. So thinking about energy consumption predictions. So we do plan to use artificial intelligence in the NOC and in managing our network and telecom operations. But at the same time, we do anticipate that we'd be looking at also using artificial intelligence with helping us in some of that energy consumption. I mean, when we think about, first of all, energy efficiency, right? So AI has algorithms that can analyze vast amounts of data from sensors, meters, and other sources to identify patterns and then optimize that energy consumption. So there is definitely an AI component that's going to be itself looking at its own consumption of data. And, then AI can analyze weather data. That's how it could predict energy demand and then adjust that energy production accordingly. So that's one way that I could think how we're going to leverage AI from an energy consumption perspective. The other thing is probably from a supply and demand prediction, because AI helps to improve the predictions of supply and demand. So that's really crucial for next generation power systems. And then when you think about renewable technologies like solar and wind, and then you have that variable availability because of weather conditions, these AI models can then better forecast when the renewable power is available and when it's needed. So I think this capability is going to be really essential for managing grid stability and, in an excited way, ensuring efficient energy distribution. Definitely, I do see that as part of this, there will also be challenges, right? So we've got to think about the data, because especially when you're dealing with NERC SIP data, you've got to have those considerations. It is not data that can be easily manipulated. It needs to be on-prem. We've got to consider regulatory changes about AI, and we need to be flexible, because this is in its infancy, if you would, and some regulations will emerge. We will all respond to these regulations, and then no doubt they will change and morph. So we need to be flexible and adaptable in order to be successful in leveraging, this technology. But definitely, I am seeing that, as you mentioned, John, you said AI is the force multiplier. Yes, we do see it in this space of energy, definitely.
Very good. Thanks, Marjan. Caleb, any comments to add to that?
Marjan, it's hard to follow up an answer like that. You had all the right topics. I've just got to elaborate more on what you said, because everything you said, it was all the big topics that I foresaw or was thinking about. The rise in power usage will only hopefully make us rely more on renewable forms of energy, and there's a cost benefit, or there's a trade-off, right, between a renewable source of energy and a non-renewable source of energy, and that's that usually a renewable source of energy takes timing, takes planning, and that means collecting more and more data from our grid, right? You've got to have that data set to make more informed decisions, and that will drive more need for IT and communication services, I think, right? You'll have more and more endpoints in the field regulating energy flow, production, quality, and that means that there's more data points coming back to be processed to enable more power usage. That also means that our communication systems have to be capable of bringing in more and more data at a faster pace and in a reliable way. There's a difference between communication systems that are built for speed and performance, yet are not highly reliably and highly available. So utilities are always on the focus of how can we meet this business need, but do it in a reliable way so that data will always be there, because it comes down to grid stability. It comes down to making sure that our ratepayer is getting what they're paying for. So yeah, a growth in technology will definitely be fueled by the growth in AI and the power production needed for that. That's a really interesting statistic, by the way, something I hadn't thought about until you had sent that over. I think the other thing that it will drive, not only the increase in power need, but also the increase in using platforms like AI and ML, is more and more data hygiene. We're going to have to be directly connected in terms of ownership of these pools of data. As that pool of data is shared and processed with other things considered, other boundaries that we haven't crossed today, we need to make sure that that data is well organized, that any kind of improper data or data that may lead to an incorrect output is clean. So data hygiene is going to be very big. And then there's always the cyber aspect that comes on top of that we have to be mindful of. So I think we'll all be employed for quite some time. And I think it's going to create a lot of new opportunities for people coming out of college, entering the workforce, but also those transitioning within technology or positions. There's going to be a lot of new opportunities out there. I'm excited about it.
So Caleb, I think you said as San Diego Gas and Electric builds its data lake, it's got to be a lake that's clean enough to swim in.
That's right. Yeah, maybe even fish from.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Well, I think we're towards the end. Edwin, any final remarks before we go to Q&A?
I do, and I'll just finalize it with the with this slide, right? And it's just a sample AI areas of focus for operations that we have implemented in the NOC, and we have created modules, and we have been able to utilize effectively and make us more efficient in our operations, right? Again, there is no module that can just simply be lifted, put it in yours, and it'll start giving you the savings or the improvements that is needed. It's more of implementing an actual long-term methodology using CRISP-DM. It's a great framework to follow to answer your specific questions. Are you focusing more on the truck roll, right? How can we make it more efficient, faster? What are we trying to save? What are we trying to improve there? And let's put the right parameters in place, the right criteria, collect the right data, and engage different folks that have done something similar, right? And get their inputs. One thing to note these days is that there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of models. There's a lot of people that have probably tried something. Try to leverage them, right? Engage them. Let's partner on this. Let's learn from each other and let's grow. One area that is there is the managed security, right? AI can definitely be implemented in many areas. Our focus is on the operations because of a network operations center, but we are implementing AI or executing a similar methodology for the managed security. There's a lot more, or there's the different set of data to be looked at. There's a time element to the responses needed, to the analysis. So again, it's more of which area to focus in. There are activities, there are models out there, and whatever you're looking for, then it's just a matter of deciding to go for it and implementing it now. Right? So.
Great. Well, I think that'll conclude it and lead into the Q&A session. Bobby, do you want to? Do we have questions, or is there anything that that people have populated into the chat?
Yeah, thank you guys. That was really informative. We do have several questions. We'll try to get to as many as possible. If we don't get to your specific question, we can follow up directly after the program is completed. But one, I'm going to take them a little bit out of order because one, I want to level set, and I probably should have interrupted you guys. Um, One thing I was thinking of also, but one of the questions we got, that AI and ML, so machine learning and artificial intelligence, sometimes are used interchangeably. Could you
Hmm.
expand
Hmm.
on the differences in AI and ML and how your organizations view AI versus machine learning?
Uh,
Would
I,
you want me to take that real quick, or Marjan, or?
All right, I think it's for the utility.
And
So, I mean, Marjan, do you want to start, and then we'll come back to.
yeah, absolutely. So machine learning is a component used by artificial intelligence. It's basically a model that is constantly learning and expanding its knowledge to enable decision making. So when you leverage artificial intelligence, it's basically the intelligence that can leverage machine learning or a model in order to sift through data, take a certain input, and then come out with a particular output. It could be a decision, it could be information, and the intelligence part of it is that it leverages one other component is large language models to be able to go and just sift through vast amount of data and come up with insight in a short amount of time, which makes it just so powerful.
Caleb?
yeah, unfortunately, at
Go ahead.
Nokia, we have a lot of acronyms, and we have a lot of, and we use things interchangeably. AI, ML for us, AI, ML always go together. There is no one without the other, and we refer to both of them. But yes, it's worth having the distinction. At the end of the day, though, you rely on both, and whenever we're implementing AI, we assume or we expect that the ML and the correlations and all the underlying activities are happening behind the scenes to support it. So, but good clarifying question. So.
Yeah, that's a good call out, and I think we end up pairing AI and ML very closely because of the major benefits to ML, right? To the machine being able to train based on data sets leads to something that's more valuable quicker. That was a big leap forward in terms of technology. Those data sets could be static in the past. The artificial intelligence could make less inferences based on the data, and so machine learning has been just a huge enabler to the overall AI construct.
Excellent.
Good. Thanks, Caleb.
Thank you. We have two questions I think I can combine because they're very similar. But it really centers around one around, I think, Marjan, your 200% ROI over a period of time. And the question was really around what period of time is that 200% ROI? And then I think it really leads to the other question about the cost of implementation and training coming down as we move forward with AI. So maybe speak to both of those things because it's really around the costs associated and the return on investment.
Yeah, we're looking at a realization over 12 months.
So 200% ROI over 12 months. Excellent. Okay.
And keep in mind that once a project is implemented, it does take 12 months for it to realize the benefits. So we do not anticipate that the project may take, say, 6 months or 18 months or 24 months to complete. So we always give it 1 year to begin to realize those benefits. And part of our governance framework is that a year after the implementation, we actually go back to the project leads and we recalculate the return on investment because we want to find out did we actually achieve that ROI? Were we off? Did we overestimate? Did we underestimate? And interestingly enough, what I myself, when I went into this, I expected that we would overestimate the return on investment. And I was quite surprised that, maybe it's the nature of being a utility that's conservative, and utilities sometimes are conservative in nature, but the average ROI across the project, the target was 500 and some percent, and the realization was actually over 700%. Not all projects were underestimated, some were overestimated, but overall, I think that was pretty good. And the reason we go back is not to penalize anybody, it's just for us as part of our continuous improvement. It's so that we learn about better estimating these automation and technology investments.
Yes, indeed.
Very good. Thanks, Marina. Bobby, was that it? Or are there any more questions?
A couple of others. We have just a couple more minutes. One I want to ask about, I think you hit on it a little bit, but the person asked about the trends with respect to green energy and DERs and such. How will AI need different models, learning models, in order to address green energy?
So Marjan, can I start that off, and then, or Caleb maybe? So the more DERs you add, the more SCADA devices you're going to add, and the more complex and expansive the network is going to get. And so, do you now need AI to streamline this more complex, expansive network? Maybe Caleb, you can go from there.
Yeah, I think it's a function of just numbers, right? The amount of devices and coordination that we will need to do across the grid. There's also a regulatory impact there. Maybe today utilities, and this totally varies depending on who your regulator is, but today utilities have access to some data that they might not have access to full sets of data. Here in California, that's true. Consumer data and privacy is kept very, very important, very strictly watched over, and it should be. As the regulatory arena changes, as grid stability with more and more renewable sources of information or sources of energy come about, that just means there's more data points to process. I think also the bigger change may be a shift from localized processing. Much of the decision making on our grids today is made in a localized fashion to a more distributed model, where decisions could be made centrally and or locally, depending on the situation, depending on the need at the time. But I think just to wrap it all up into one, we're going to need to make more decisions faster with more points of data. And as humans, we can only go as fast as we can. The models we built today, in terms of processing these types of decisions across the grid, are sometimes very manually driven, human driven, and that might not be sustainable going forward.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to close there, and we'll get to the other questions people typed in. We'll follow up offline, but let's just say final words of thank you, and then any final comments from the team here.
I just wanted to thank Caleb and Marjan and Edwin for joining this panel. You gave some really good insights into something that is all about data-driven insights. So thank you very much.
Welcome.
Great to be part of the panel.
Thank you, everybody.
An honor. Thanks for all the great questions.
From UBBA, I want to thank you all for sharing your knowledge. That's what UBBA is all about, collaboration. For those of you still on the call, we will be continuing the conversation around AI at the Utility Broadband Alliance Summit and Plugfest in November. So join this crew there, and we will continue the discussion. Of course, reach out if you have any other questions. And thank you all very much for your time. We appreciate you. Have
Thanks,
a
Bobby.
great day.
Thank you.
Have a great day.